Scene 11, Take 1, ABAS, Seasonal Bonsai Series, August 2024.
If you're a fan of reality TV, this is the place for you.
Yes.
Just because who knows what's going to happen, totally unscripted. We don't quite know what we're doing, so bear with us.
We'll learn as we go.
And we're
learning together.
Learning together. And I hope you get something out of it. These are 4 deciduous trees, and they've basically been left to grow. We've Renee's worked on one of them, but we've basically let them go, which may have been a mistake. We're going to look at that. So first one, nothing. There it is, going. I think it's getting bigger. I'd have to check at the very first picture of it. And again, we're doing nothing. We're just letting it go. Oh, it's kind of nice to have trees like this.
Yeah.
You don't care. Second tree, Dennis Makishima's tree, Mr. Ugly. Yeah, nothing against Dennis Makishima. It has grown. I mean, I just let it go because I thought, well, I'm going to be here, so I'll just let it go. And this was probably a mistake. But it's still at its early stages, so we'll discuss this a little bit farther when we get to it. So this is okay, not ideal, but okay. Our third tree, which is much farther along, Challenger, did thread grafts. We're going to relook at those. And Renee has been working on this over time, so she'll tell you what we've been doing and discuss what's next. But that's the only thing that has saved it from blowing out and destroying the lower half is by trimming it. So we learned a lesson there. And this is Renee's tree. Since it's all, look at teeny tiny leaves, but these are a little bit bigger. So she has a little bit of stuff to do. Pretty simple things at this point because it's not growing fast, which is great. All right, let's start with the second one. All right, Mr. Ugly. I'm still at the level of getting the base where I want it. And so until this is done, I don't care about a lot of what's going up above it. I'm going to do a few things, but I have to wait. I did the first thread graft the first year, and that's all I had. So I think I need a bunch more, but we'll see when I repot it. So as you go up, we had this huge wound, and you can see the way it is healing. And now instead of a huge wound, we have a huge callus. So I'm going to have to work that down a little bit. And then as you go up the tree, you have these didn't grow out very much. That one and this one. This was a sacrifice branch, and it's grown some. But look at this up here. All the energy has gone up here. I should have cut these shorter because this is making it bigger, but I have no plans for this yet at all because I'm not there yet. So all I'm going to do just right off the bat, this is getting really thick. I'm going to cut all of these off. Because this all happened since May, June, July, August, 3 months.
3 months.
So there is no point in having these. And I have no idea where the apex is going to be because I don't know what the roots are like. All right, so all of these are coming off. I'm going to make this one even shorter. And this one. I liked that one, but I have no idea again. All right. So, oops, even these little, see the way this is growing out and this is way up top. I might as well keep these shorter. Also, okay. Yeah. That means anything that comes off of here, I'm going to pinch back because I don't want this to grow any more than it already is. It's already way too much. But that'll give these a chance to grow, this a chance to grow. And I'm thinking, let's flip this around again. My biggest branch, can you see it? This one right here. And I think it's big enough and it's going to keep growing. And I've decided, I've already cut it once, I'm going to cut it to slow it down. As long as I keep this slower, this will grow okay. And I want this one and this one to grow and a couple of the other smaller ones. So this is also going to go back. And then we're going to revisit this in November. So it'll be interesting to see after doing these. The November one will be hopefully much more of a structural thing. Okay, and that's just, I'm sure this is fine. I'm going to cut this off so it's out of the way. For my thread graft, I'm not going to worry about that until later. So this one I'm leaving, this one I'm leaving. And you can see this big wide, I don't know how much of this is going to come off. Probably almost all of it, but not until May. Okay, so down and dirty, that's all I'm going to do with this. And we'll revisit. And I'm going to seal these. All right, Challenger. I'm loving Challenger because it is progressing. We've made mistakes, but it seems to go with the flow. So thank you, Challenger. So what we had last time, we had 4 root grafts. This one never grew, but it was alive. And this one was fine. So what we discovered is it was all of the same thing with Mr. Ugly. All of the growth up here that's so strong will slow down all of these. So Renee actively kept these short up above, and lo and behold, this budded out. So that's why you know you have to, if you want it to grow, it has to have sun and nothing impeding it, and not the energy going somewhere else. So Renee was really good about that. So those two look pretty good. And on the back side, these two, so that was 2 years ago.
It was in February of 23, a year and a half.
A year and a half. Okay. We can cut these off now. Like, thank goodness, something positive, and we can cut these off. Gonna do it with this, Renee? Should do it with this one? This one. All right. So let's make the first cut. Maybe.
Got it?
From behind. Okay. There's that one. Now these are like any other wounds that have to be healed. I'm going to come around. So we want to make those a nice concave cut. It's a little harder. And that has, oh no, it came off. Okay, there was, I think, an old graft behind there that was there. Okay, and then we're going to seal those. And we also made 4 thread grafts. So let's look at those. And we color coded them because they're hard to trace through. This is one right here. And we made those in May.
In May, yes.
This one's alive, kind of weak, kind of but hanging in there. And the back side of that one is...
It's the broken one.
It's the broken one that broke. Oh yeah, you see that right there? Somehow this broke. But there's still a green leaf there. There was a green leaf. There's green leaves up there. So we're not touching it. It's alive. I think this is okay. We just need to make sure I'm just going to go ahead and do it right now. But it has lots of room. This one I can. So anything around it, I'm going to cut shorter. That's not, see, that's not a, this is this is one going in. So I'm cutting these, actually I'm cutting this completely off there. So I don't need any of this. So if it's budding out, I'm cutting it because I don't need it. So now this has, see, there we go. All of those leaves. So I can cut this one also. And you need to keep looking at this through the year or until November when we revisit to make sure that there's nothing impeding light and air getting to that. So that's one. There's one right here, green one. I'm not sure if it's ready or not. I was going to give that until November, just because. But I am going to. This one that comes up through here, and you see this is variegated. It's pretty weak. So I'm going to cut that because I want this outside of the diameter of the tree so it's not bothering anybody. In fact, cut this part also. So it's out in the perimeter. So here's our second thread graft. My gosh, this is great. And it's out here by itself. I don't really care. I'm just going to let that go. It doesn't matter. And then here's one. Also, it's hard to see way back in there, but it looks really good. And this is one of the really important ones. And nothing is really bothering that one from up above. It's already really high, growing strongly, so we're good. But see right next to it, this is one of the thread grafts. So you see that thing growing there. It's by November, it could be a foot high. So those come off. And they'll just sprout new ones. So, oops, there's another one right there. Okay. I have one more. This one's about the same as the other one. It looks fine. But we just need to make sure, cut off some of these little leaves. And we actually want that to grow too. So I can cut a couple of those leaves, but I'm leaving the end on that. And then this one, I want to leave that. Is that budded out through there? That's not part of the, it isn't. This is where the curve for the graft works. So we want to keep that. And I don't see anything else that's on the perimeter. It's not in the way. It's below everything. So I'm fine. And you can see sometimes it's getting bigger, so this cut paste kind of separates. I'm just going to press it back so it's back where it belongs. And this is slowly continuing, and I'm not going to touch that, but you can tell where it has been healing, going in that way. And that's the other battle is we're trying to do all this, but we're also trying to heal a large wound. Okay. I don't think there's anything else we need to do to this one. So watch it. Anything that comes out, keep trimming those off. And success on all of the thread grafts, and the thread grafts look really good, and the root grafts. Mm-hmm. All right, so we'll re-see that in November also. Mm-hmm. Last is Renee's.
Okay, so this is our more refined Trident that we're been working on. It was defoliated in May, and as you can see, the leaves are very, very small. So it slowed it down quite a bit. In fact, it's even slowed down a little bit more than I would like to see. It almost looks a little bit too weak for me, but we'll deal with that a little bit later. So we defoliated it in May. We let some of these extensions grow because we're still developing ramification on the branches. So some of these things we'll keep and some of them we will take off. And if we're going to keep them, we'll put some wire on them to put movement into them. The top of the tree, you can see the very top, it looks like it's growing quite a bit stronger than the lower branches. Because I'm a little more concerned about how weak this is down here, I'm actually going to partially defoliate the top and take a little energy out of the top to send it back down to these weaker branches down below. So that's about all the work we're going to do for right now. So first of all, take that one off. And we're going to partially defoliate the top. And when I say partially defoliate, I'm going to take one of each leaf pair off. So if you look in here, we have 2 leaves coming out from that one node. So at each node where there's 2 leaves coming off, I'm going to take one off. So that will take some of the energy out of the top and keep energy down in the bottom. Not a lot of work to do right now.
What about this? If you have something like this, where you actually have a bud, would you cut this off to here?
Yep. And then take one of those.
And then take one of these leaves off also.
Yep.
Okay. So sometimes it wasn't much growth, but it was a little bit.
So we're just going to leave the rest of it alone. We'd put some wire on it back in May, just to kind of reposition some of the branches. Not a lot, just a little bit to kind of tweak the branches. It hasn't really grown that much. I mean, it hasn't grown that aggressively, so it's kind of not, it's kind of not cutting in. So that's a good thing. That's a good thing. Yeah, so when you have wire on a deciduous tree, you've got to watch it constantly, because if it starts to grow, the wire can cut in really, really fast. So now we're going to go down to the lower branches. We're still working on developing ramification, of course. And so we have some new growth popping out here. Question number 1, do I want to keep it or do I want to get rid of it? I see this one piece growing back here. It's kind of growing back into the center of the tree. So I kind of don't want that. We'll take that one out. We have this one that popped out from down here. Do I want that? Do I not want that?
What are the pros and cons?
What are the pros and cons? Well, I'm looking at the structure of this branch. We come up, we have, taper coming up to here, and out to here. This kind of comes out from below this curve right here. Is that going to be helpful in any way? Is that going to add to the development of this branch? Or would it be better to take this off? We have a little bud here coming out. We have a bud here coming out. I don't want this to get too thick. If you have too many things coming out from one point, the branch will, tend to get a knob there, a thickening in a knob. So I'm just looking at the structure. If I bring it up into here, would that help? Would that be helpful? I kind of decided to cut it off, and now I'm having second thoughts, because if I bring it up into here, it might add a little bit of ramification
and there's nothing else, and everything else is ramified, so there's nothing else you can move.
Yeah, so okay. I think I'll leave that on and just put a little piece of wire on it. Moving over to this one. Do I need to let these grow anymore, or do I need to cut them back? I'd like to get some division in here. I'm just going to cut this back to there and see if I can get some division back in here. I'd like to see at this node, I'd like to see something popping out from that node to, give us some division and ramification in this area. And that also would be true for this one. So I'm just going to cut the tips of those off, try to force the growth back a bit. I might just put a little piece of wire on this one and bring it out and let it grow a little bit more. This one, going back in here, probably want to force some division back in this area, so I'm just going to clip a little bit of that off. We probably want this one to get a little bit bigger and thicker, so I'm going to actually put a piece of wire on that, wire that out, probably wire that out. This one coming up off the top. I think I would like to force some division back in there, so I'm just going to cut this off to here. Put some wire on these guys. Anything that's growing up toward the light is going to get stronger. These down here, if they're growing out or down, are going to get a little bit weaker, so we're going to wire these guys, put some movement into them, and bring them up into the light a little bit more. So that's basically it. Oh, yeah, thank you. Yeah, there's a little guy coming out down here out of the bottom, which we don't want. There's no way we can use that coming out of the bottom of the branch there.
Is this a good example of why it's ideal to develop the bottom completely first?
Yes, it's very difficult to start with your developed tree and then try to develop something below. And that's what that's what this branch is. When I first started working on this tree, this branch did not exist, but this part was pretty well developed already. So when I got this bud popping out here, I thought, wow, I want a branch there. But it's kind of it's a difficult developmental process because it's low on the tree. Lower on the tree it is, the weaker it is. It's harder to get the thickening and then also to follow up with, you know, developing ramification on it because it grows slower.
How many years?
How many years has this been? Probably about 5 years of developing this. But actually, it's not looking too bad.
Well, we'll see it after the leaves are off.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
But, you know.
Yes, it looks better.
But it's, you know, it isn't looking too bad. So we're going to put a little bit of wire on these guys, and we're done with this one. Okay, so we have a question about why we made our cut at this point rather than cutting it all the way back. Because this is a long internode, not very pretty. It would actually be better, you know, to cut it back here so we don't have this big long internode. The reason I cut it here is because I want to see if I can get it to back bud in here, leaving this node here, so that if it pops in both places, this will take a lot of the energy. This will take a lot of the energy, this node, so that the ones that come out here will be weaker, smaller internodes and smaller leaves. So we're going to leave this on temporarily until, you know, we can get a back bud here. Then we will cut this off and go with what we have coming out there, budding out there.
Looking towards the future.
That future. The future is up on us. Okay, so we put just a little bit of wire on to position the extensions that we want to leave for thickening. So they just have a little wire on them, put a little movement, get them in the right position. So when they harden off, they will be where we want them. So that's kind of where we are now. That's all for this guy for right now. Next visit will be in November.
And what about fertilizing?
Oh, fertilizing. Been fertilized several times. I did not fertilize it up until after I defoliated it in May. Fertilized it then and fertilized it again several weeks ago with an organic fertilizer, low nitrogen. Not BioGold, it's called Espoma, but it's also low nitrogen and organic. So it has, you know, slow growth, doesn't force growth.
And all of them have been fertilized.
All of them have been fertilized. They have all been fertilized. So that's it. That's it for the deciduous guys. Okay, so now we're going to start working on our junipers. And first we'll start with a little overview of where we are. We started our little project in February of 2023. At that time, we repotted the cutting, the pre-bonsai, and then the more refined. The intermediate one was repotted back in 2020, so it will be repotted this February. So things were repotted. At that point, we just let things grow, fertilized, sprayed for insects, kept things healthy, let them grow until July of 2023, which is a little over a year ago. And at that time, we went in and did the initial pruning on the intermediate tree. We did our initial pruning and initial wiring. Did some shari work. So it's grown out quite a bit. In fact, it's grown out a lot. Wire's cutting in, so we're going to have to take wire off. The intermediates, we basically just started working on pad development on this tree, and that's what we're going to continue with. And then on the refined tree, we also, the basic work last July was setting up for pad development. So you can see they've grown out naturally, nice and naturally. The one thing that would be interesting for everybody to notice here is the difference in the growth patterns between these four trees. Our young one is just growing kind of helter-skelter, yeah. We're just fertilizing it and letting it grow. The tree, the pre-bonsai that we pruned and set a basic structure for, it doesn't have a lot of pad development and a lot of ramification. We fertilized it with Osmocote, so all of the energy from this tree is going into a lot fewer tips. So what was here is now growing very, very strong because there aren't that many growing tips on this tree. We're just starting to do pad development. On Carmen's tree, this one, you can see it's in contrast to this one, it's still growing pretty strong, getting some nice spiky growth. It's nice and healthy, but this tree has a lot more ramifications started on it. So the energy is going into a lot more growing tips, so they don't get quite as long and aggressive. The more ramification, the more growing tips that you have on the tree, the slower it will extend. So that's this tree. And then on our refined tree, you can see the difference here. Actually, this is actually growing quite well. It just isn't spiking out like this because it has so much development in the branches, so much ramification, so many growing tips to send energy to that it is not extending out. But you can see little extensions on the top here, extensions on the top, and that's exactly what we want to see. We don't want to see a lot of really aggressive growth because once we get started on developing the pads and the branch structure, we don't want it to blow out and lose what we've already gained. So that's kind of an overview. For today, we're going to go in and on the pre-bonsai, we're going to go back in. We've got a lot of new growth here to work with. When we originally pruned it and set basic structure, you have to leave a lot of growth on there, a lot of foliage that you probably aren't going to need in the future because you need, we pruned it pretty hard. You need to leave foliage on there to keep the tree healthy and let it grow. But then as we progress through the development, we're going to go back in and cut some of that foliage off that we left for the health of the tree and start going back to some of the back budding and start developing our pads on this guy. So our decisions on this one is to go in, look at what we've got. We have a lot of new growth, decide what we want to keep, what we want to take off, what we want to let extend to get thicker. If we need to develop our primary branches a little bit more, let those grow, and just kind of make some decisions about what we need to keep and what we need to leave. On the intermediate, on Carmen's tree, You want to discuss it, Carmen?
No.
No. On this one, we've got a good start on our pad development. So basically, we're just going to go in and do some pruning and thinning and wiring to continue with that pad development. And then on the refined tree, same thing. We're going to go in. We're going to do some fine pruning on the pads to continue that pad development. May even make some decisions. This tree is, more of a literati style. And as I look at it, it has a lot of foliage on it. I might even look at places to reduce the amount of foliage on it, make it look a little less healthy than it is. Literatis are supposed to look a little bit, weak, a little bit not quite so sparse, not so aggressive looking. So we might even make some decisions about, taking some of the foliage off and thinning it out a little bit.
It's very top heavy.
Yes.
Yeah. I've knocked it over once already. So, yeah.
Okay, so that's what we're going to do today on these guys. Okay, so we're looking at our cutting and what we need to do to this little guy to move him forward and prepare him to be a bonsai in the future. It's grown quite a bit over the year. Initially we put some wire on the trunk and put some movement into the trunk. Looking at it, I'd like to put a little more movement into the top here, maybe even a little bit more into the bottom. So I'm going to put a good heavy piece of wire up the trunk so we can move that around. Let's see, I'm going to do 8. Let's do 8. Then if we need something stronger, we got something stronger. So I'm going to go ahead and put this all the way up the trunk. I make a little point on the end when I'm going to sink it into the soil. Kind of helps. This is called structural wire. The big wire that you put on the trunk of the primary branches is called structural wire because you're basically setting the structure of the tree.
And you should only have to do that once.
Maybe. Unless you just love to wire. Then you can do it as many times as you want.
The bigger the gauge, the better.
So you're weird.
This is where you can tell if your wire has been annealed properly. When you're working with large size gauges, if it hasn't been annealed properly, it will give you trouble. And that's what's happening here. This is pretty hard.
That's your wire? Oh, it's 8. Yeah. Do you want me to hold something down? Are you? No,
I think I'm almost
You're getting
there.
it.
I think I'm almost there. Oof, this is bad. Okay. All right. So now and put a little bit more movement into this trunk. And at this point, it's really hard to say, you know, this tree is probably going to be about twice as tall as it is. So a lot of the stuff that's here on the bottom is really not even going to play into the final design of the tree. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to just put some wire on some of these little wimpy branches, put some movement into them, let them grow in case we need to use them for gin in the future, gin shari. So we'll just kind of set it up so if we want to use them, we don't have just these ugly straight branches. So now we have a little bit more interesting movement. A little bit more interesting movement in the trunk. A little bit better. Yeah, it looks a little bit better. Just, you know, when you're trying to bend large size wire, sometimes it's easier to do it with the pliers than with your hands. I know my hands don't have a lot of strength in them anymore. So anyway, I think you get the idea there. So now we're just going to put some wire on these little guys and maybe thin it out a bit. It's got a lot of weak foliage in here. We want to push really strong growth on this guy. So we're going to take out some of the weak foliage back inside so we can extend these branches and get some good strong growth on them. I'm just cutting off the stuff that's going down. Growth going down is going to make the branch weaker. You want things going out and up, make it strong. And when I say weak foliage, you can see on this one, these are the nice strong growing tips out here on the very end. You know, this is where the hormones that make the branch grow are located in the tips. So this is the strong part. And then as you move back down into the more shaded areas, you get this really wimpy, weak growth back in here. So that, and if you clean that out, this is just for when you're developing a tree and you're pushing a lot of growth on it. If you thin that out and take that weak stuff off, these will grow stronger. So you can develop a bigger, heavier branch quicker. So anyway, that's what I mean when I say I'm taking out the weak growth.
For a beginner, that always seems
It's-
counterintuitive.
I was going to say that exact same thing.
Because it just creates a leggy branch.
Well, when you're developing something, you know, I wouldn't do that like on the refined tree. Wouldn't do that. I do it a little bit, but not to the extent that I'm doing it on this one. If you look at, you know, one of these branches, you know, the tree has to send energy to all. The tree has to send energy to, you know, to all of these tips. So even though these are weak, it's still trying to send, it's still alive, it's still sending resources to these weaker branches. If you take those off, so now you've removed those weak things, you know, the tree isn't going to have to send resources to the weak part now. Now it can send all of its resources to the strong parts, and it will grow faster.
It's more efficient.
Okay. So I'm just going to kind of basically thin this out a bit. Because like I said, this tree is going to be about this tall. I mean, that's what my vision for this tree is, a tree about twice as tall as it is now. So these things that are down here really aren't even going to play a whole lot into the design. So I'm not being real critical and analytical about what I'm taking off. I'm just basically going to take off a lot of the weak stuff, let some of the stronger stuff grow. Just thin it out a bit. Take off the stuff that's growing. If you have stuff that's growing down from the bottom of the branch, we want to take that off. Oops. Because that too, that's weak. That's going to get weaker. And it's just pulling resources from the tip where you want the energy to go. But that's another thing to point out when you're wiring junipers for the future. If you can, not just putting the wire on, and the trunk was already too big when I started that I couldn't do this. But if you can put a twist in it, like on these smaller branches, once you get the wire on, if you can put a twist in that, rather than just giving it up and down and back and forth movement, if you put a twist in it, then as it matures, you can get some nice, if you put shari and stuff on it, you'll have that twist to the trunk. I don't think I have anything that demonstrates that.
And you're twisting it and making tighter, not making the wire looser.
Yes, you have to twist it in the same
direction.
direction that you put the wire on. You twist in the same direction. Yes. If you try to do the other way, it just loosens the wire and it doesn't do anything. Okay, guys, that is it for this one.
Yay! This is the wire I removed so far. There's some more wire on it, but I wanted to show you this part up at the top. This is how much it dug in. And there's a few places where I've actually torn, like there. It's dug in so much it tears. You want to try and take it off before this happens. And it's almost always the stuff on top and the really strong growing branches like this. See another spot right there. When you get farther down on the tree, and some of this wire that's still there, it doesn't dig in as much because it's not growing as much. So I haven't taken that off, but most of the big stuff I have. Not as bad with a juniper, it'll kind of grow out. If this was a maple, you'd be crying right now. So, but you do have to watch this, and it's really hard to catch it sometimes. All right. So now, what are we doing, Renee?
What are we doing? Okay,
where do we start?
Where do we start? Well, let's see. We have, a lot of back budding up in here. You can see the difference. Okay, let's juvenile versus mature growth. Because we pruned it back so hard last July, we got a lot of juvenile growth popping out. After that, a juvenile. Okay, let's look at a juvenile. Juvenile is needle growth. You can see the needles. That's juvenile growth. It's not in focus, is it? Yeah, juvenile growth. That's juvenile growth. All this back in here you can see is juvenile growth with the needles. Mature growth is the scale growth. So you can see this has scale leaves, this has needle leaves. And that would be the difference. And so we want to go in, we're going to go in here and clean out most of the juvenile growth. We're going to use some of this back budding, to start developing some branches from. But we want to use the stuff that has mature growth on it. So we're going to go back in and, a lot of this, it's just way too dense in here. But we'll wait and we'll get to that. We should start at the bottom. I need my scissors.
Yeah. Those are scissors. Yeah, this whole big wad right here. It could make for an interesting shari, I would think. But and it does get thinner. It's like a big wad, and then it's thinner behind it. So something will have to be done there. Part of that removed and ginned. But that'll be after we clean everything up. Okay.
So let's just kind of evaluate what we got here. We have, this was our first primary branch on this side, or just another, it's kind of like another trunk actually.
Yeah, we were talking about that. What we were going to do is this is going to come up
and be another apex on that, off of this little thing, probably.
I think so.
Okay. So that's that. And then we have another branch,
There's our back branch.
a back branch here. Guess we should take the wire off of that guy too.
Is it as thick or is it okay? Some of them weren't too bad. I thought it could wait.
Oh, okay.
I was just gonna let it.
Well, we need this branch to get bigger,
Right.
because this is going to be our, back branch. And it's a little bit weak right now. So we would really like to let this one just grow and get a little bit thicker. So we're going to thin it out, leave all the nice heavy growing tips, thin out some of the weak foliage, and just let this continue to grow. I got to thin this guy out too. Oh my goodness.
It's a long process. Were you talking about? Let's flip around. This one, actually cutting that off that's hanging down
Yes, we're going to cut this off.
because it's done its job, or it's not going to do anything more than it's already done.
It's coming from back up in here. There's a bunch of stuff coming from this one point up here. This is already kind of leggy and long and weak. And if you look at from the front of the tree, we want this branch to be a little bit higher. We don't want anything dipping down quite that low.
Do we leave it a little stub? Yes. I like that. Okay. And look at all the juvenile at the base.
Yeah,
And then it went out.
definitely see the juvenile on that one.
Okay. So this is probably going to be rewired up if this all needs to be thinned out.
Yeah, it needs to be thinned out, and start working on developing some pads over in here.
Okay. Pick a side.
Pick a side. Well, you want me to work over here and you
Yep.
can work over there?
Yep.
Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here and thin out some of this juvenile stuff that we don't need. We're going to pick some of these ones with mature foliage that we'll probably, use to start developing more pads up in here. Let's see what we got. This is nice because we have these back budding in here with mature foliage, which is good. It's got a little bit of immature right at the base, but we'll live with that. So this is good. We got back budding there. That's good. But I got to get rid of some of this stuff. Got too much going on in here. Can I get that out of there? Maybe not. Well, that'll have to do it for now. Okay, so we've got this. This is still a little bit leggy, but we're going to leave this for now. What have we got back in here? Where's our division?
Are you okay with this turning, or was it better with that off? Okay. Off the turntable.
I just was curious why you don't cut it all the way back to the new growth. You might repeat my question.
Right here? Cut these back, all the way back?
Yeah. I don't know. Ask you.
You're thinking Peter, aren't you?
If only we could be more like Peter.
I am. Well, I'm going to cut this back. I don't know if I'll cut it all the way back to there. We have this. This is good. This is good.
That'd be a restart. You need to get rid of this thing.
Yeah, basically we're going to restart all of this because this is already out too leggy. It would be nice to cut it back. It would be nice
Cut
to
it
get.
backward.
Would be nice if something popped back in here. But we have this, and we have this, so that's good. And we have, well, this comes off from over in here. I got to thin this out a little bit so I can see what's going on. That one. I don't want to cut off too much because I don't want it to go juvenile again.
Yeah.
Forget,
And
is this Shimpaku or Toy Fella?
This is Kishu.
Kishu.
Kishu Shimpaku. Yeah, this is Kishu.
So it shouldn't be as bad,
Shouldn't be as bad, for sure.
but
Can cut some of it off, but we have to leave some good strong growing tips or it will revert back, which we don't want to happen. I can't believe how it back butted right in here. It just went crazy. Wow. This is just a mass back in here. Holy moly.
Which turn it
Back in here. Oh my goodness.
same thing.
Yep. Just a bird's nest. It's a bird's nest.
So on conifers, do you need to keep the top short so the bottom
Bottom.
will grow better like in deciduous?
Well, if we're trying to develop something, we shouldn't just let the top blow out. But we want this because we were developing another apex on this. We do need this to grow and get thicker and heavier. So we are gonna let this grow,
But we're going to wire it. Also.
but we're gonna wire it up and probably thin it out a bit too. But these things, this is what we need to grow down here. We need this branch to get thicker and heavier.
Shorter, so that
We're gonna
it's
let.
greater taper?
We need to let this get thicker. At some point, we will cut it shorter, yes. But we need to let it grow now. And see, this kind of weakened it because of where the
badly.
wire cut in.
Yeah.
Right.
We need to let that kind of heal.
Can you just
What are we going to
Well,
prop this up? Or are we going to
I
tie it
think
up
we're
to here?
just going to put a little piece of wire and just kind of
There to there.
brace it up. Yeah, we'll just brace it up like that. We have to lay out the
that's
path.
the layout pads. And
We
you
have
do
to
have
lay-
some that are already like this 1, 2, 3. And then you have these two that are over the top, the fill. So there are some there. They just need to be rewired out. And then this would be shortened a little bit because you don't want it to cover this completely. So there are some already set up, like that's already set up, and then this will go over the top, and then that's a little bit long. So there's some we did with the little 3, 1, 2, 3, although this one's going to go back there. So you can do this just for practice, but eventually it's all going to go back. But it doesn't hurt to make the pad. So they are there. They just need to be worked on. This one that one's kind of nice because you've got one. It's almost hard to see. There's so much foliage. 1, 2, 3, like that. And then turn it back a little bit more. Clean it up when you wire it. And that's the start of your pad, and that's a really nice place for the pad. So you can see it starting to happen. Yeah, like that right there. All right. I wanted to show you this since I hadn't repotted this since 2020. So it's been 4 years. And I noticed on the bench when I watered it, there we go. It does not, eventually it will, but it really doesn't percolate. This is so dense. So when you see something like happen and it's floating up there, you need to really break this up. It's like Psycho. Stab it, and then all the way around, especially the edges. So now it will drain. I'd noticed it for a while and thought, oh, this is not a good thing. See, that one's going through, but it took a while, and on the bench, it was taking a long time. So anyway, something to be aware of. And so you get closer, and there's got a lot of roots there. So this is a nicely dull chopstick. And Renee has, this fun little, what is this called, Renee?
It's from a
It's a dental
dissecting
tool.
kit. I
It
don't
looks
know
like
what it is.
Antique.
It is.
An antique dental tool. Something like that. Just kind of works like, and then it'll the water will drain through it, and you shouldn't have any problem until I repot again in February. Okay.
Go for it.
Okay, so summary. This is our pre-bonsai, and it had grown out a lot since last year. And we went through, selected the branches that we wanted to keep and the foliage that we wanted to keep, wired it out, so we're starting our pad development process. There was a lot of excess foliage, so that's been cleaned out. We did save some of the back budding. This is going to be real important in developing the pad in the future. So these little guys popping out here, these are very important little things. So we want to make sure that we preserve those, give them lots of light so they can grow.
Why?
Why? Because they're going to contribute to the development of the pad.
You don't want to see all this. This all gets covered
Are
up.
you going to cut it off or cover it up?
This may actually totally go in the future. We don't know that yet, but this, when we first started this process, a lot of it was pretty leggy. So in order to get more compact pads, you have to lay things out, encourage back budding, getting back budding, and then these will eventually take over because they're back closer. We'll push the foliage, the pads and the foliage back closer to the trunk of the tree and get rid of some of this legginess. But that will come in the future. That's part of the development process. We can't do it all at once. It's a process of letting it grow out, encouraging back budding, using that back budding to fill out the pads.
And when you say push, you're meaning you'll probably cut off that extended foliage, maybe?
Yeah, it depends. We'll see what happens in the future. We would like to cut all of this off. See, we've got this was really leggy. We kind of made a little curlicue here to keep this while we were encouraging back budding. If you cut this off, you'll not get the back budding. You have to let this grow to get back budding. So now we've got the back buds here, and eventually this is going to go and this is going to become the branch. So
would be another example of it where you have this is not coming out as far and it's smaller, so this is a little bit easier for the pads. But then you've got stuff coming out that's going to be your fill right now is this. But this, you probably would want that to be another pad because it's nice to have layers of pads. But this is covering up that. So as this gets thicker, it'll look much nicer. So that's the kind of thing you're looking for. And same thing with up here. You've got your 3, here's your pad. This is almost the fill. It's going out maybe a little far, but as these come out, those become the fill. And you can start cutting back to make it a nice compact dome.
Clam shaped. We're going for clam shaped.
Okay.
So when you first lay out a pad, you choose the center leader, the center part of the pad, and that is the reference for how you prune and set the side branches for the rest of the pad. So the center of the pad should be the longest part, should be kind of rounded like a clamshell, and then the fill should be on top so it kind of slopes back as you develop the pad. That will happen in the future because this is pretty young. This is pretty raw at the moment. So basically, over the whole tree, we've selected what we, to start our pad development, encouraging back budding. We've also, on these 2 runners here, these were, we wanted to thicken these, especially this one, because this is going to be the apex of the tree. And we just need this to grow, thicken, and so we can eventually cut it back. But for now, we want it to grow like crazy and put a lot of energy into this part and let it grow. Same thing here. We've got some pretty deep wire scars that we need to heal as well. So letting it grow will help heal those wire scars. And I think that's about it. Anything else, Carmen?
Nope.
Okay.
All right, so the next one had already had, the pads had been set once. It's grown out, trimmed it all back just like the other one again. And so it should be a little bit farther along. So let's see, which one should we, so we take a look at this bottom one. So you see all of these things, and this is a fill back here. You see how much bigger it is, and it's actually covering that up. And these have extra little bits. So they've still formed the 1, 2, actually this one now, 3, and then this is a fill. So it's a little bit fuller, but we still have a long, long way to go on these. Same thing here. What else do I say about it? So it just looks like it's, you can tell that it's a little bit farther along. There's less bare branching and more things covering it up. So then I just have to wait for it to start growing out again.
Yeah, it's that process of pad development. It takes a while, doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah, see, like this is a really nice fill. So it's going right over the top of here. But at some point, this might get too thick because you have 1, 2 right next to each other. So at some point, one of these might come out. Same thing, this is a really nice fill. Because if you didn't have those, then yes, you would have all this bare branch just coming all the way out to there, and it kind of doesn't look appealing at all. So yeah, same thing. There's actually a space between the fill and that. So this is going to keep growing out. And as that's growing out, I'll keep this a little bit shorter so they'll meld into each other a little bit more. I don't think I have much else. The apex is fine. They're always the hardest to build, in my opinion. So they're totally different. So instead of having this pad, you've got a cluster of different laid out going out, but they have to fill in this area. So it's kind of a different way of wiring to fill. All right.
I guess that's it. Okay, and this is our more refined bonsai, and it's just a kind of a reiteration of the pad development process. We started out with it was pretty much healthy and grown a lot. So basically, what we do is go in and prune off the bottom of the pad. We, going back for that clamshell shape, taking off the excess on the bottom, thinning out the top. Want to keep the things that are growing up cut back so we have more of a clam-shaped, tapering back of that pad. You want the growth to be, like a clamshell. I forgot to bring my clamshell as my example. It's good, but anyway. So it's basically cleaning off the bottom, thinning it out, setting it up for the next series of the next growth so that the pad development continues. And, we've just, gone through the whole tree. Before I started working on it, I kind of sat down and took a really close look at the tree overall and noticed some things that I might want to extend in one area, maybe cut back in another area. I had looked at this branch thinking that I might want to cut it off because it was getting a little bit too full in here. But once I got it thinned out and wired, I decided, it really doesn't look too bad there at the moment. It may come off in the future, but for the time being, I'm going to leave this. It adds to the complexity of the branch. Other thing I need to say about, the pad development process is you're always looking for opportunities to subdivide a pad into smaller pads. That adds complexity to the design and makes the tree look older. So whenever, when you start working on it, you kind of look at it and say, okay, I can make a pad here, I can make a pad here, I can make a pad here. So you subdivide big pads into smaller pads. The other thing that I noticed when I was analyzing the tree is there's a kind of a big hole in this area. So I want this to extend. I won't need this to get longer, so it kind of fills in that area. So on this area, on the lower part, or on the part that you don't want to get extend, you actually trim the tips and thin it out, but actually trim the growing tips to keep the growth from getting too aggressive. But now up here, I want this to get a little bit longer. So for this, I left the growing tips because I want it to grow and extend. So we left those guys on there to grow and fill in. So it's going to come down probably into about here eventually. Other than that, I think, the process is the same, going up the tree, thinning it out, looking for opportunities to subdivide large pads into smaller pads, thinning out, cutting it back, keeping that nice clam shaped to the pads, always working for that. Other than that, I think, of course, the apex, I cut that back really hard. I think that's about it. You want to say anything, Carmen?
When are we going to revisit these? How long is it going to be before we work on this
probably
again?
If we repot, we'll repot. We'll revisit that in November and just see how much they've grown.
Okay.
Probably not going to grow a whole lot between now.
So probably spring before we do serious anything.
Probably not going to even. It'd probably be next summer
June.
Before we actually do serious pruning and pruning and wiring and thinning and stuff.
But we'll show you as we go along.
Yeah, we'll share the how much they've grown, in the time lapse between our series.
Okay.